So, welcome to the second Rhythm Section Future-Proof Masterclass. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for tuning in. If you missed the first one, it's available to catch up on our YouTube channel, so make sure to check that out with Moxie and Bradley Zero. We are broadcasting live from Jumbi. Big thanks to Jumbi for hosting us, this beautiful space. If you don't already know, Future-Proof kind of evolved from the Patreon scheme that Rhythm Section started during lockdown. And the aim of the Patreon was to kind of try and demystify the industry a bit and sort of level the playing field, because some of that knowledge about how to break into the electronic music scene and industry can be a bit opaque sometimes. We wanted to try and break that down. So we created a Patreon during lockdown. And Future-Proof is kind of the next phase of that now. It's free, unlike Patreon, which you have to pay for. And we're making this content available to a wider audience. Which is why we're doing this today. So I should also say a big thank you to Arts Council England and PRS Foundation for making all this possible. I should introduce myself. So I'm Emily. I am one of the people running Future-Proof along with Henry and Bradley and the rest of the Rhythm Section team. I'm also a DJ, aka Echo Juliet. And I'm very excited to be here today with Tash LC. Thank you, Tash, for joining us. Thanks, and also welcome to everyone in the room, I should say, and welcome to everyone watching at home. Tash is a longtime friend of the label, brilliant DJ, host, presenter, someone who's amazingly equally at home on the radio and in the club, which makes her perfect for today's chat, which is about bringing your authentic self to radio and broadcasting. So I guess maybe I should kick things off by asking you how you started out. How did you get into presenting? Where did it all begin for you?
So I kind of started out radio presenting when I was at uni. So I went to uni when did I start uni? 2014 it would have been. And I initially went there wanting to be like dead set on being a TV presenter. That's what I wanted to do. That was it. Like I just hadn't even thought about radio. And then I got into uni and then I discovered the radio station there and I thought I'd give that a go. And then I started doing a show there every Friday night. And it was sort of at the same time as I was getting into DJing. And so I was kind of on this kind of beginning this journey of starting to discover loads of really cool music from like around the world and lots of like global club stuff. And then so I was spending just hours in my room, in my halls at uni, just uncovering all of these just sounds I hadn't heard before and just being in like deep SoundCloud wormholes and stuff. And then was finding new music for my show. And then I kind of just started doing the show every week and being in the radio station. And then alongside that, I found I was kind of looking out for opportunities outside of that too. So my mum actually was sending me loads. She showed me in that Worldwide FM were opening up. She said, there's a new station that's opening up, try this out. So I was like, okay. So I went there as a broadcast assistant and then got involved with them kind of around the same, maybe 2015. And then I carried on doing my university show every Friday. And then I also started helping out at Radar Radio every week. So I was kind of back and forth between uni and Luton and then various radio stations, just trying to do as much as possible. And then started doing a pirate show on this station called Reaction Radio, which was like this pirate station. And that was a whole nother thing. That was quite funny. But yeah, I just started kind of just immersing myself in as much radio as possible without really knowing what it was that I wanted to do. But I just knew that I wanted to be in all of it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I wish my mum was as into radio as to know that Worldwide FM was starting, like to have spotted that early on. That's a useful mum.
Found it. I think it was like, oh yeah, my mum's the best. She literally, like when I was at uni, so no one would listen to my show. Like it's a Friday night, the students, you want to be out just getting mashup. And then so I'm just like doing the show and she's texting me, like pretending to be, she's like, okay, say that so-and-so from like South Shields is da-da-da. And I'm like, oh, hey, so we got like a shout out here from da-da. And she's texting me like all the questions to ask, to say, and like all the topics. And we go through the topics every week for the show. And then she would just pretend to be loads of different people and just to beef up the show to make it sound like people were actually listening.
That's amazing.
And
shout out to your mum. And am I right in thinking you studied media performance at uni, right?
Yeah.
So what did that teach you that you've brought into like what you're doing now?
I would say media performance taught me confidence for sure, because like the main reason I did the course was like when I was very like tunnel visioned into being a TV presenter when I was about 18 going to uni, I saw that they had a unit on TV presenting. So I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. That's why I want to do it. I just wanted to get through the rest of the course to get to that one unit. And so that taught me confidence on camera and just like interview skills. It taught me how to kind of like write my own scripts and like getting a bit into like TV script writing and stuff like that. And how to improvise. That was a really big one, which is really relevant for radio improvisation. And I would say, yeah, general confidence is like the big one I'd say I got from uni, because I dropped out after like a year and a half on and off. But I think like in hindsight, at the time I was a bit more ignorant. I was like, no, I hate it. But in hindsight, I think I like learned a lot from it. Yeah,
it's really great to have had the opportunity to have that formal training, I guess, because so many people in this industry just learn by doing, right? But to actually have someone teach you how to perform to a camera or how to do that stuff is, yeah, like an amazing skill to have gained early on, I guess. That's really cool. And obviously we're here to talk about like being your authentic self on radio, and improvising and things like that are definitely a big part of that. Do you have any tips for kind of how to get your personality across, especially when people can't see you? I guess that's the challenge with radio, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a weird one, isn't it? Because it's like an invisible audience, which can kind of either be really scary to some people or really reassure, or like actually quite like a big relief, because you can't see people in front of you like you can if you had like a TV audience or whatever. So I think to get personality across, for me, it's something that I've learned and I'm constantly in the process of learning. And for me, it's really about trying to perfect that thing of like treating the mic and the kind of invisible audience, the listeners, like friends, and just having a conversation. And I think that is the main skill with like presenting and radio presenting, is like really trying to develop like kind of breaking down what like the mic's even in front of you, trying to like kind of get rid of that fourth wall, I guess, and really, really speaking to people as if they're in the room with you, like trying not to go into this mode of like, I'm a presenter now. And that's something that I feel like I'm constantly like working on. And like if I listen back to shows from uni, I'm sure I'd be like super cringed out, because I was so aware that I was trying to be a presenter. And now I try to I think a lot of it's pace, slowing down, which I'm really trying to do. And I talk really fast.
Yeah, I've just noticed that I've been speaking really quickly. So
it's a nerves thing that as well, isn't it? But yeah, it's all of those little things. But ultimately for me, like you kind of want to get to the point of not being able to differentiate between yourself having a chat with a mate and being on the radio or presenting or whatever it is. It should ideally all just tie into just you, and in the most authentic way, which is hard, much harder than it sounds.
Do you ever imagine that there's someone in the room that you're like talking to someone? That's something I've heard other people say that they do.
Yeah, kinda. Like, yeah, sort of. Like, I guess, for example, with NTS, I've been on NTS now for like a year and a bit, and that's kind of easy because you have the chat room and it's so engaged. So you're basically constantly talking to people. Whereas when I've been on KISS last year, that was quite difficult because I was pre-recording every show every week for like a year, like 15 months or so. And I had my producer with me sometimes, but at the beginning it was just me at home recording stuff alone, and that is hard to like. And I hated it, to be honest, because it felt like I just couldn't engage with anything, and I was really having to force it. And yeah, when I was doing that kind of like recording at home, I really had to pretend that there was somebody there and like almost close my eyes and like disengage from my surroundings a bit. But it's so much easier, obviously, when there is somebody in the room. But yeah, it's just, if not, I just act like I'm just talking to a mate or somebody that's like my housemate or whatever. But yeah, when you're on your own, it is hard.
Yeah, and I guess that's partly like a lockdown challenge that a lot of people had as well. And also people that, make shows remotely for like online stations at home. It's probably quite a common thing, actually. So it's interesting to know that is the hardest way to do it, actually.
Yeah, I found that it is, because it's just like not how you wouldn't normally just have like a whole chat. I mean, I do just myself all the time, but like full on conversations with absolutely no one there. You feel like a bit of an idiot, but it's trying to like get rid of that, and that's the hard part.
Yeah. And how do you handle mistakes when you're doing live stuff? Because that's another part, I guess, of being yourself, isn't it? Like, what goes through your head? What do you do when you realize that you've messed up?
So like now, I would say like I'm much more comfortable with messing up. And what I actually tend to do with NTS, for example, I will leave my mic up the whole time or for as long as possible. So I'm not constantly putting my mic up and down, because then it's like I am just continuing to have a chat. And if I do mess up or bumble, I'll be like, oh, I don't know what I'm on today, and just take the piss out of myself. I just do that like every show because it always happens, rather than trying to pretend that it's perfect radio, which I think, you know, it feels very different. I think I'm fortunate right now to be in the position of being on somewhere like that, or being on like an internet station or a community-led station, as opposed to like a big global sort of like BBC type station, because there isn't as much room. But where do have a lot of room now, I just laugh at myself and just like, yeah, just take the mic. And then people really respond well to that, because again, they feel like it breaks down that thing of them just feeling like they're just chatting to a mate. But again, it's something that you do get comfortable with, but no one's expecting perfection. Like, that's kind of boring.
Yeah.
But it sounds ironic, doesn't it? Because it's like being yourself can be so difficult. But it does, because of the context.
Yeah.
But yeah, laughing at myself is definitely a big one.
That's a great tip. Just make a joke out of it. Yeah, move on. Did you ever, in your early days, have those moments where you kind of feel like you'd freeze, or you'd like don't know what to say next? Is that something you've never had that problem?
Yeah, no, I definitely have. I'm trying to think of like specific examples. I think, when I was first doing radio, for sure, I would avoid speaking too much. I think, I would avoid speaking, or I'd like try and find too much information on things as well, which is another one, I think. And I still kind of do that now. Like, I'll go to like do a show and I've got like someone's entire press release, and then I'm just like, let me read this. And like, obviously you can't do that. So like I try and like quickly condense now, like just by glancing at a bit of info. But that's something that I'm still learning, is to like not trying to do too much, so then there's less room for those mistakes. And I think where I get most nervous about the mistakes is when I'm trying to like retell someone else's story, or like reading someone else's like press release, or someone else's influence behind their music or tune or whatever, because that's when I don't want to like mess up. So it's about reducing, trying to like figure out ways now of like just reducing stuff so it's smaller and smaller, so there's less room for that. Because I would say at the beginning I'll try and read everything, and you just can't.
Yeah. That's something that I'd heard recommended before for like public speaking in general, actually, is to like reduce what you want to say to like minimal bullet points, even like 2 words if you can, because your brain will fill in the gaps in a natural way, won't it? That's kind of the theory.
Exactly. And like sort of telling the difference between doing like doing an audio book, or like just reading a bit about a tune for like a radio show. But I enjoy talking, so like I do want to kind of tell a story with all of the music that I do play, but then it can quickly turn into just being a bit like blah, blah.
Yeah. No, I've written press info about my own music for radio before, and then heard people stumble over the words that I've written. And I'm sitting there kicking myself, like I should have made it easier for them to read.
You know what? Maybe we need to like, I'm just thinking as well, because I don't put out music, but with the label, just making like a radio friendly read of like PR read. That's actually a show.
It's a great
just
show.
Like 2 words, good music.
Good review guaranteed then, right? And how have you found it different than doing things on camera in comparison to radio?
They are very different. Like I would say, I'm trying to think when I first started doing stuff. Well, I was doing stuff at uni, but then I gradually started to do more and more, because I always wanted to do the TV thing. But actually, I think what happened was, as I did more radio, I wasn't really doing any TV stuff. And so then I got more nervous of the TV stuff. I would say that it's a very different approach. Like, it's so different. Like, because even this, for example, if you're sat down, you're thinking about the camera, you're being told stuff. I think one of the first things I did was like, it was a while ago, was this job for this thing called Yanga, which was like a TV station on Sky. And it was like presenting this TV show about African music, and it was cool, but it's a whole nother world, because you're reading on a teleprompter. It's a script. You're trying to look like you're not reading. You're being given information. That is really trippy. Like, it's a lot.
I can imagine.
It's a lot. But then the boiler room stuff that I do now, with that's not scripted, but that I find still completely nerve-wracking, like so terrifying. And that's where I have to like really, really force looking like I'm comfortable. And I don't think that's something that will ever go. It's a different type of nerve.
Yeah. I can totally imagine that. I guess it's there's also a lot more people around, aren't there? Yeah. Much bigger team, pressure levels feel slightly higher maybe compared to being in a studio on your own and just having a mic.
But I think it's that same thing, that same essence of like remembering that no one's expecting perfection. I think it's that too, which it felt a lot harder, but it is that it's like, it is still just you. It's just in a different format and different stuff going on.
Yeah.
But it's a lot.
And you have to actually put some makeup on.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. So going back to the radio side of things, what are you doing behind the scenes to prepare for your shows? Like what kind of, obviously you're choosing music, but what else is going on? What else are you thinking about? What are the considerations?
So thinking about a lot, actually. So like, I would say that, I mean, I pretty much am listening to music all the time anyway. So like, kind of, even when I'm not consciously thinking about my radio show, I kind of always am subconsciously, because I kind of have monthly playlists on like Spotify where I listen to stuff every day, and then I'll add it to that. And that's just like my general like monthly stuff that I'm listening to. And then I'll kind of like, maybe some months or some weeks I'll find like, for example, today I was listening to loads of like Haitian music just on Spotify, and I'll be like, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to do my next show as a Haitian special, and then that gives me a reason to like dig into Haitian sounds and then do some research in that, and then I'll just do that. And like, that wasn't something that I had pre-planned. It was just like, it just came more spontaneously. And I did that last week with another show about Ivorian music. So I'll have like more spontaneous moments like that where I just get excited about a genre, and then I just want to like find more. Or if I'm doing, so I have a feature on my show called The Passport, which is where I'll like check in with like artists, DJs, like music people, and like they'll share a few tracks from their city that they feel represents them and their city, and then they'll introduce themselves through like some voice notes and then share the tunes, and it's a really nice little like snapshot of like different cities around the world. And so I'll do that. So that's something that I'll more think about and like collate my Google Sheets on like with all the people that I want to interview or have on. So I'm kind of like always adding to that. And then, but I would say, so I sometimes think about The Passport, mainly I'm just always thinking about music. But I'd say the closer we get, I don't plan like my shows way in advance. I'm very, very last minute with things. But say like the day before or a couple of days before, I make a decision on what I definitely want to do music wise. But I've got ever-growing list of just like stuff that I listen to. So it'll either be that, or I don't know if that answers the question, but it's just, there's no like complete method. But I'd say the most organised part of the show is the Passport feature, because I'll be thinking like weeks ahead of like, who do I want to get on, and you got to do the like comms and stuff with them. So there's a lot that goes into it.
And do you have, for each show, do you have like an overall kind of format or template or structure that you use? Like, is that something you think about, or do you just kind of go with the flow?
I would say I more go with the flow. Everything's more based around the music. So like, obviously I have my beginning where I'll introduce the show and like chat a little bit about like what I'm going to be playing, and then say it's just like a new music selection for that show. I'll have like my playlist in kind of in order of what I want to play, but not necessarily always in order. And then I will probably like I'll have all of my my press like lined up for what I want to talk about, and just have a few notes on like tunes and stuff in my doc for that show. So it'd be like 17th of Feb, whatever. And then I'll sort of like read from that, and I won't always do an introduction for every tune, but I'll normally like back Anno on like the tunes so that everything gets like kind of a little bit more context. And then I might, if I say I did have a Passport feature, I'll plan that for about halfway in, because my show's only an hour. And so I know that that's going to have like a solid 15 minutes, and then 15 minutes at the end to come back in for me to kind of talk and finish the last few tunes and then say goodbye. So I haven't like completely run out of time. But I would say at the moment I'm struggling with having an hour show. Like, I'm really trying to get back to, it's really not enough. So I'm trying to work on getting back to 2-hour radio, which I was doing before. But sometimes it's quite enjoyable, the hour, because it's like a bit of a power hour and it goes, and then you just do as much as you can. But it's a lot of stuff to squeeze in.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah, if you think about, you might in a DJ set that's an hour or a mix, you might fit like 17, 18 tracks, and you're trying to cut that down to then fit in other things as well. It was something that I'd never really thought about until I spoke to a friend who worked for the BBC, that actually like at that level the shows are very heavily structured, right? Because you've got things like news that has to go in on commercial stations, ad breaks that have to go in. So it can be incredibly fixed, can't it, in terms of like half hour for this, half hour for that. I guess that's the magic of working with someone like NTS. You've got that flexibility to do what you want with the show, right?
Yeah, like when I was on KISS, like I'd never had that level of organisation with the show before, because you have to work to adverts, and like you're working in like 8 segments total, I think, over 2 hours. But it was weird because you just always have to think about advertisements, and it kind of forces you to be a lot more organised. But at the same time, it's like annoying timing all of the tunes and all of the segments. But then again, that's where a producer comes in and really helps, whereas on NTS as a producer, but it's not to the same level as you would have it somewhere like Kiss or BBC, where everything's got to be timed for ads. Actually, no, that wasn't at BBC, even because they don't have ads. But yeah, at Kiss they did. And so it was always weird listening back to the show, and then you'll have like your segment, and then it's just like a Kleenex advert, and then you're like, oh, this is
which you didn't hear at the time of making it. Right?
Yeah.
Put that afterwards, yeah.
So it's weird, but it's nice to have a bit more freedom now with doing like something like NTS.
Yeah, and that is a perfect segue onto the next thing I was going to ask you about, which is about like producing your own show at or in different contexts, working with a producer. Could you talk a little bit about what radio producers do when you're working at that, kind of like national level and those sort of stations, and what their role is and how you work with them?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was working on national radio, it would be my producer I'd chat with every week, and we'd check in on what's happening for the next show. And then it was John T, my old producer. And so if I needed him to, he'd do the reach outs to the artists. So that's what they can definitely do. I would say at like, probably like I say a Giles Peterson level or whatever, they'll be doing that. Like the producer would definitely be doing that. I would say for me, I even when I was at national radio, prefer to reach out to people myself, because I've already got like the network, and I just prefer being a bit more like hands-on and personal. But like a producer will do that, and then the producer will also think of segments and like features for the show to keep things interesting. They'll also get all of the music for you, and even if you get the music, you send it over to your producer actually, and then they'll clean it all up, make sure there's no swearing. Obviously NTS and whatever, that doesn't matter, but on national radio they have to clean all the music, which is a headache sometimes because they want you to have clean versions, but obviously that's not always available. Cleaning music, features, timing stuff, sorting out guests, booking in studio time. What else do they do? Just making sure everything sounds really tight, creating segments for you, and recording your like voiceovers. Yeah, I think that's the main. And track listing. Yeah, track listing's a big one. Admin, basically loads and loads and loads of admin. Yeah, there's still like track listing on NTS now, but I've just started working with a producer who's great. And we work together on like developing the show and doing segments and like adding in new ideas and stuff. But it's not a necessity, but I just really wanted to have someone that I could work with to kind of progress the show. So that's been fun. That's only been over the last like month.
Yeah, that external input.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people who doing shows on like online stations who still work with a friend or someone else to have that.
Exactly, yeah.
That second head on it, and also someone quite often who's like a lot more confident with audio editing,
which I'm not at all.
Right.
Yeah, not at all. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, which is the kind of the second part of this question, I guess, is then taking a step away from the national stuff when you're doing all those things yourself, and when you're kind of putting together ideas for features like the passport thing that you came up with. What does a good show package look like? Like what are the considerations if you're producing the show yourself? What should you be trying to get in there?
I think a good show package has like an intention. So like I think it's great to have an introduction to your show, letting listeners know what's going to be happening, like what's coming up today, even if that's not like having loads and loads of features or anything mad, just what kind of music. What I really, really like, Martha Radio, she does like lots of radios, Martha. So what she used to do anyway, if she still does it in her show, she'll be like, today's show is going to sound like this, and play like a little snippet of one of a tune, and then another one, and this, and then we're going to go into a bit of this, and I think that's so sick. Just getting people excited, so it's not just kind of tune after tune after tune. So giving the show an introduction. I think a great show is also unafraid of selecting. So that's something that I don't really do in my show at all anymore, is mix. I mix like a little bit, and it's no problem if you do, but I think that's what differentiates, I think, from whether you want to kind of do the kind of broadcasting thing or be like a radio DJ, I suppose. And for me now, I'm more interested in how I can develop like my voice in radio and like introduce music and talk about music and host interviews and conversation and play tunes out in full, rather than feeling like I need to always mix, because I think a lot gets lost. But some people will hate the talking, and that's not their style, and that's completely fine. I think there's a space for all different types of radio. But yeah, like I think thinking about what songs could align really nicely with other songs, and like how you can flow, like planning your track list so that there's like a bit of a story that makes sense. And yeah, developing a feature is also really cool if you have like an idea that you kind of want to, even if it's like an interview, like where you could fit that in and what the sort of ideas of the interview can be, and if you want to make the interview more engaging, like having maybe like a little like funny segment or like a challenge you can do with guests, things like that, or like maybe having like a question that you ask all of your guests and then that becomes like the strong point of your segment, or the kind of but creating like an identity, I guess. But I feel like there's so much you can do.
Yeah, I feel like I've just asked you to list everything that's possible
I know,
in radio
sorry,
ever.
it's one on one.
That's a great answer. It was great, really useful. I guess if you are putting together an idea or a pitch for a new show, what would you be thinking about in terms of pitching that to a station? Would you be making a demo? How might you go about that? Like, what's the thought process?
I would definitely say making a demo for sure, trying to find somewhere that you can record something. But alongside the demo, I would also say you would want to send across a pitch, like a written pitch on what your show's going to be about, what the vibe is, trying to keep that into like more of a like succinct paragraph or like a few bullet points. And also maybe sending over a name of the show could also be cool, I think. Something that's a bit like just well thought out. And yeah, just a bit of an insight into what your show is, who you are as well, and then trying not to like overcomplicate it maybe as well with the demo. When I first wanted to be on Radar, that was when I was like, I'm just gonna be a presenter. That's it. And then I got there and then went to have an chat, and then they were like, okay, cool. So have you got any radio you can show us? And I was like, no, never done a radio show. Just want to be on the radio, and that's it. And then I was told to maybe like just be a broadcast assistant instead for a bit. And I was like, okay, I'm humbled, but fine. But actually like that was like really, yeah, I needed to hear that because I just wanted to go all in, like guns blazing, like I'm going to be on Radio 1 now. And so that was actually like really helpful to like try and understand a bit more. I was a rubbish broadcast assistant, like producer, but like I think that was where I was able to like pick up on kind of watching other people and how they did stuff too. But I think, yeah, you want to kind of just have something that sets you apart from other shows. And even if it's playing similar music to somebody else, it's like you're different as a person. So make sure that whoever you're pitching to understands that. So it's like a little bit of a bio, a little bit of an introduction to what your show is, and maybe the sounds that you're going to play.
I guess why are you making this show as well? Like, is that a useful thing to include in that?
Yeah. Why? Yeah, exactly. Like, why are you making this show? And kind of, I guess, why it's important to you. But yeah.
Because I feel like stations must receive a lot of pitches, right? And probably within certain genres, quite a lot of people wanting to do the same kind of things. So that coming back to the theme of this chat, the authenticity is the thing that's gonna make it stand out, you would hope.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's difficult to do something that's completely original because it's like, hard to create like completely original work. I mean, especially with radio where you're literally probably playing like other people's tunes. So I think it's about how you can kind of, I guess, almost, it sounds gross, but like selling yourself in a way, and trying to really make that demo as strong as you possibly can and not trying to make it too long. It doesn't need to be like hours, but maybe even like half an hour or like 45 minutes max, just to give them like, because I've not really been on that side of radio, but I don't know how long people listen to demos for. So you don't want to give away like so much, but just something that I think just that beginning and that end need to be there.
Yeah.
So people can like just get a taste of like what you do.
I feel like a lot of the time people just skim through things and right.
Same with like CVs, I guess.
Yeah. You just like skip through. This is what the beginning sounds like. This is what's going on in the middle. This is what's going on at the end.
Yeah.
So, there's no point in making something that's 2 hours because
exactly
investing a lot of time into something that's not going to get heard potentially.
Yeah, which is shit. But I think that's also why it's important to also like send across a bit of like writing on what it is, what you're about and what the show's about. And like people will be more likely to read all of that than they will to listen to the whole show.
Yeah, exactly. And once you've got the show, let's say your pitch is successful, how do you keep it interesting? How do you keep things varied and keep it lively and different every show?
How do you keep things varied? Well, I feel like naturally you will because music's always going to change. But then I think that's where the sort of segments, because I keep saying the segment sort of features things, but I think that that's really what does separate shows from each other. And like I just really enjoy shows that do something a bit different and like just have that, because I think when you've got that sort of feature, it's really what is going to separate you from other shows, because it's going to be unique to you, even if it's done in your the passport thing that I do might be not be 100% original, but it's kind of like done in my way, and I've created like now there's like an ident that goes into it and stuff, and there's like a whole little like intro narrative bit. So trying to think of something like that, but if not, I'm trying to think what else I find like keeps stuff fresh. I think it's just how you like layer your show and how you organize your show, and like the way you're not always maybe building up from, say, like going from like slow up to like fast BPMs even, and sort of like messing around with that a little bit, and kind of taking listeners on like a bit more of an unexpected journey that isn't kind of like always needing to build that way. You can build that way. You can go like left, right, up, down. I think there's a lot of ways to keep things. I know what you mean. I'm trying to think just how to,
like, I guess, like, to use an example you gave earlier, you were talking about like focusing on Haitian music.
Yeah.
Like, I guess those kind of things help.
Yeah, those kinds of things do help, because also, you know, everyone's music taste is so interesting, and I think we feel that we have to present ourselves or present radio in this very like kind of linear way, but you don't like say that there was, you know, I love how some shows will then go really deep into certain samples and like looking into sample culture, or like finding a tune and like dissecting that and looking at like all the segments, like all the elements of a tune, or like say you do find yourself being a bit stuck for music for the next month or whatever. It's like, okay, what songs have I found? Maybe I can then look deeper into this artist and have more of a focus on this person, or like looking at this genre based off this tune this week. And it gives you a reason to research and find more, because like the research holes you end up in are just like endless. That's what I find anyway. So like if I'm ever stuck, I'm like, okay, there's never ever not enough music. Yeah, there's always stuff.
Yeah, I guess that I've found myself as well that like if I've had an idea for a show, having to make a demo for it is also the acid test for me of to whether I actually can execute and have enough music for the thing that I want to do. So it's really interesting to then take that a step further and think about, okay, once you've been doing the show for 6 months, how do you keep it fresh? But that's a really good approach.
And I guess guests are a good one.
Yes.
If you are comfortable, because I guess we're talking more about like talking radio as well. Like if you're comfortable interviewing people, or getting comfortable at interviewing people through inviting guests on, and they don't always need to be the biggest guests. Like when I was at uni, on my radio shows, which is something I really miss, to be honest, I would have like a range of people on, like some of my friends just from uni, and just random people that did random things. And then as I got more into music radio, then I would like that kind of became more and more specialist. And then I started just only really having other DJs on and music people. And so now on NTS, I'm trying to kind of go back to that slightly, where I've had like chefs on and like runners on the show, and people that do other things, but then still tying it into some of their favorite tunes or tunes that they listen to in the kitchen or whatever. So there's still like a broad range of guests. So you don't always need to pigeonhole into like only having DJs on or whatever. Like you can explore all your interests really, but there's always a way to bring it back to music.
That's super interesting and really nice, I guess, because after a certain number of years, presumably interviewing one DJ is not that different from interviewing another DJ, right? Kind of, yeah, that's a really great way to mix it up.
Yeah.
And thinking about marketing the show, I guess all those like features and segments and stuff can kind of help with that. But what do you do to kind of build a brand around the show, and how are you thinking about marketing what you're doing?
How do I build my brand around my show? I feel like for me, it's kind of built around me in a way, in terms of like my own brand, I suppose. And so I think for me, I think now people kind of get what it is that I do and what I play, which is always changing. But I think that's like the show's like an extension of that. But with marketing yourself, like I think it's cool to try and have maybe your own artwork for the show. Some people do have like their own like specific, which can be quite a lot of work. I don't always have my own artwork. A name is a really easy one. Having a name for the show, that's like a really solid way to like just create an identity around your show. Something that like is memorable and that people can recognize, that isn't maybe just your DJ name or your artist name or whatever. And maybe having a little like even like a little audio segment or something that you can use on socials, that can be repeated for like every show. So like now I have my passport thing, I haven't really used that on socials yet, but something like that where it's like, oh okay, I recognize that that's going to be Tash. Yeah, trying to think what else I use to separate the show. Because now I've gone back to just using my name, but actually it is kind of a bit more interesting to have a specific name for the show. Also, that's nice to kind of separate you from the radio show because it's like its own thing. Yeah. But I would say a name is actually, it sounds really obvious, but it's quite a big one.
Yeah, but also quite a hard thing to come up with.
Yeah.
Depending how easy you find it to name things, but yeah, totally. Are you ever capturing like behind the scenes content, like when you're in the studio? Do you do little clips for socials and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like always on my phone anyway, so like I try and film like little bits, even like getting little videos of the tunes playing on the CDJs and then me having like a dance, or if I have guests in, I'll get like, what I've started to do recently is when I have guests in, I will like just set up the phone and just Instagram live the show, because everyone's kind of stopped using it after COVID, haven't they? And I actually really liked it. I thought it was like a really nice way to just see what people are up to. But I started doing that, so I'll just have like my phone set up and some people will like just tune in and say hi in the chat and whatever, which is really cute. I just love anything interactive. So I'll try and do that, and that keeps people like engaged. And even if people aren't listening to the music, they're like, oh, there's like a video, someone's moving on a screen, that's fun, I'm going to engage with that, it's happening now, I feel involved. And then I do get like clips for my stories and stuff. And then when I have like special shows, so like with the Ivorian show I did last week, I went on YouTube and then found a bunch of like cool music videos from Ivory Coast, and then just screen recorded a few clips from those and then made that into a reel. Nice. Because reels pretty engaging, so I try and use those as much as possible now. And sort of it's annoying sometimes because you got to kind of like go with whatever's working at the moment on social media too. So like whatever's authentic to you, like a photo or whatever, which is actually completely fine, might not work in like the algorithmics. I know, it's so annoying.
If the IG live things are a really great tip, maybe for people that are on stations that don't have like such active chat rooms and stuff as well, because it's another way of getting people who you know to engage, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Actually, I only just noticed that Bellamy had the like camera in the corner thing. That's actually really cool. It's like a little mix into like a little shubs in the station.
Yeah.
Which is cute. But yeah, exactly. Not every station even has that. So like the Instagram live things too, just like filming. I just try and generally just film as much as possible on my phone, and then everything's kind of just archive in my like camera reel. And then when I want to, I know I can always make a reel out of stuff. And make content when I need to, when I can be bothered to, so it's always there. But you don't always have to use stuff like immediately, because that's when it can feel a bit pressurized. It's like I need to make something now, but you don't always need to. You can do like, and also after your show, that's really important. I think a lot of people forget, like including me, to do content after, to like listen back, because also like live listenership is not always there either. And then that's something that gives people a reason to like, they'll see that on Instagram, they'll be like, oh, what's that looks cool, they might follow through to the link or whatever. And just continually reminding people that you've done stuff and it should be heard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a massive opportunity, isn't it, for more people to hear it afterwards. And on that, like obviously talking about NTS having a really active chat room and doing lives and stuff, what do you do, or how do you think about trying to build active engagement with your audience and with your listeners, aside from like just chatting back to whatever people are saying in the chat room? Like if you're with a station that doesn't have that already, have you got any tips on how to kind of start building that?
Yeah. So another DJ that another radio host that I really respect is Ellie Prohan.
Yes.
Yeah, and like she's still on Kiss, and like even though Kiss doesn't have the live listenership, well it does, but like it doesn't really have the engagement, she's created this feature called like 15 seconds deep or something, I think it's called, 50, something like that, 50, I can't remember, but like something like that. And I've just been watching like from afar how well she's done with that, and like it's basically like an asset that she has on socials, and it's called like 60 seconds deep, and then it will be like two producers going head to head, and it's just an asset. And then she gets people to respond in the comments with what their tune was, or like which tune they rated the most. So it gets people to tune in for that moment. And then so many people are engaged with it now, and it's done really well. And that's from being on a station that hasn't got a chat room or anything. Yeah. And I really, I think that's really cool. I don't know how you should develop with the producer or an owner or whatever, but regardless, it's a really good way to get people engaged, because it can be hard to not. And also even with NTS, it's easy to just depend on the chat room. And it's something that I'm trying to do less of, because I'm really aware, and like I think the NTS crew are as well, of people not feeling involved if they're not in the chat as well. So like trying to engage those people too. So I always like even using language like anyone listening, wherever you are, da 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 da, and like trying to take it away from just being me and the people in the chat, because otherwise it's like just a two-way conversation. But yeah, I would definitely say making the most out of assets, trying to befriend people that like graphic designers and people that can like have mates that can make stuff for you, even if you can't yourself, which I can't. So like I need to have people around me that can. But yeah, stuff like that where you can keep people engaged on the socials outside of chat rooms and stuff. It's possible. It just takes a bit more work.
Yeah, it's bridging the gap between the station and your socials and your community, isn't it? And trying to connect them up. Canva is a big tip for people who are not into graphic design. Free tool.
Yeah, Canva is a shout actually.
Yeah. Lots of templates. Anyway, I guess sort of for the final part of our chat, it would be good to talk about kind of building a career in this stuff, and how to make that move from those kind of online and sort of community oriented stations that we're talking about to broadcasting on a national level. So maybe if you could talk a bit about how that happened for you, and then we could also talk about some other routes that exist as well.
Yeah, for sure. So my first stint on like national radio was in 2018. Was it on 2019? Now, yeah, 2018 it would have been on BBC One Extra as part of their residency. So I was asked to come on to do that, and that was sick. It was like me. Who else was doing it at the same time? I think Snoochie was also doing it, and who else was doing it? Big Zoo and Moses Boyd. And it was, obviously that was like a massive honour to be asked to come on. And I did that for like a year. And then after that finished, then I was back doing like Worldwide FM. And then I then started on NTS. But no, before that, I was asked to come on KISS as part of their residency. So that would have been at like the beginning of 2020 or like 2019. My memory's terrible. But yeah, that happened. And then I was asked to come on there. And then I was on there for like 15 months. So like that was, again, like very different to being on like internet radio. But both experiences in BBC and in KISS, I'd say, were very different.
Interesting.
Yeah.
In what way? But that you're happy to share?
I just really enjoyed being on BBC. But I think, to be honest, the reason it was so different on KISS and so difficult for me in terms of getting into it was because I was never allowed to do a live show.
Yeah, of course.
And so because I was on at midnight on Sunday, so there was nobody to produce it. So it wasn't like I couldn't really be in the studio. So to do that 15 months of radio every week, like pre-recording, was tough. And like, I don't know if I could really do it again, but with BBC, I was pre-recording for a long time. And that's the other thing is, it takes a long time to get to the point of doing live because there's so many mistakes that can happen. Like when I was on One Extra, I had two producers, Jesse and Matt, who were great. But there was one show, one of my live shows, that because I didn't do many because it was like towards the end I started going live, and one of the tunes was corrupted on my USB.
Ooh.
And I put it in, and it was just dead air. And if you saw like the panic in their eyes, because obviously this is like live on radio, and there's like however many listeners. And they proper panicked, and they managed to, like, we put on like a jingle. I can't remember what we even did, but they were like running around the studio, and I was trying to like hold it down on the mic, and then they managed to like salvage it. And it was just like, but if that had happened on like NTS, like, I could probably like laugh it off, and then we'd just get over it and whatever, like put in another tune. But it was like panic. And it's like there's just so much less room for error on national radio.
Also, with BBC, if there's dead air for too long, doesn't some automatic thing kick in? I feel like that I've heard that. I don't know if that's still true.
Oh, probably.
If there's dead air for more than 20 seconds, there's like some emergency.
Like a national emergency or something. Basically.
Like some kind of emergency program like kicks in, or it starts playing the national anthem or something.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I didn't get to that point. My God.
That's probably why they were panicking.
Yeah, innit? No, it was like, I think they actually, I don't know what tune it was, but they managed to find a tune. It was like, okay. But like stuff like that, you could kind of like shrug off a little bit more with an internet station worldwide or whatever. But it just, the pressure is a lot more like heightened. But I also found it quite like thrilling being in an environment like that, because it is just like, wow, this is like the big time. But it's hard. Like after I was on the residency on One Extra, I thought I've got it in the bag. Like, this is me. Had like a meeting afterwards, and then it was like, okay, cool. We're gonna make something work. Never heard from them again. And then that was kind of it. And I was like, okay. And then it's just on to the next residency. And then they just keep it moving. So like the hard thing with national radio is the opportunity to be,
carry on.
Okay, let's do it. The opportunity to create yourself like a permanent space is really hard. Like it's much smaller.
Yeah, I guess there's a big talent pool and hardly any opportunities.
So when you do have those residency opportunities, you kind of take them, and I really, really put as much as I could into both, and I'm really grateful for the experience. They're like just very different worlds, and like it makes me feel like a more kind of rounded presenter, I guess, being able to experience both. Yeah, there is just so many types of radio.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that's sort of one pathway that you've had. You mentioned earlier actually that they offered you an opportunity as a broadcast assistant on Radar when you first started out, and would you agree that sometimes people come through that pathway into those kind of opportunities? Is that something else that you've seen, people kind of coming in and doing producer or assistant jobs and then stepping up that way?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like especially then, see a lot of people, so there are obviously broadcast assistants or radio producers that are so sick at that, and like they go on to become like amazing radio producers, and that's their job, and like they're so important. And then there are people that like do come up through the radio production kind of like lane, but I really, really respect those people because they end up actually coming out of it knowing everything and being able to just like produce their own shit and just being really creative, like proper well-rounded. But some people do that, yeah, for sure. Like a lot of people that I knew did start out from being audio like radio producers, and then would stay in like a station like represent or whatever, for example, for like years and years, and then would like become like really amazing audio producers, and then would maybe go on to, and it's like kind of like sick because you're constantly surrounded by music, you're just constantly picking up tips from the people that you're producing, and like just getting loads of tunes from them.
Yeah,
like it's ideal. So I kind of, to be honest, I wish in hindsight that I'd taken the production thing a bit more seriously, so that I could then, say in a situation like COVID or whatever, then be equipped to be able to like produce my own stuff and actually know. And then I think it's also really sick to come up through the production route, because then say you do get bored of the presenting thing, or it doesn't work out in the way that you wanted it to, or whatever happens, you've then got like a whole production job that you can then go into, because I constantly see opportunities for radio producers all the time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And there are some kind of more like formal routes, aren't there, and opportunities out there? Are there any that you've kind of come across that might be useful to share?
So there's sometimes I see for like presenters, you mean, or just
presenters.
So I do often see, so NTS do often like do call outs for, I know they sometimes are looking for people that specialize in like a range of genres, or sometimes have these call outs for like specific genres. So that's pretty cool thing to keep your eye out for. I know that the BBC, like every year at like Christmas time, I think it is, they'll look out for presenters, for like up and coming like young presenters to cover the like breakfast shows or whatever around Christmas. And they do
on Radio 1.
On Radio 1.
Yeah.
So they do that every year. I don't know if you send in demos. I guess you do an application from sending a demo. And some people have come up through that and like done really well. What else do I see? I
think when we chatted before, you were talking about there being quite a common route of people starting out and represent and then going into one extra through that.
Yeah.
And that's not a formal thing, right? That's just something that happens.
Yeah, loads of people. I think Represents like churned out some really, really incredible presenters through that station. Like they seem to like just really nurture like their talent, and like really, and I think it's just, I haven't spent that much time there. I've done some bits with them, but it really seems like it's developed from a real home. And I think it kind of like when it started out in Peckham, it was kind of almost like a youth club's like come radio station type thing. And you could tell that they were like a real family, and like they've been so supportive of the people that have come out of it. So stations like that have been really, really great. And then also like obviously like UK, because I was speaking to some people today from like Newcastle and stuff. And so like it's easy to just always think of London.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, you know what I mean? You live in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Right? Like people just often will be like London. Actually, like I was researching this week for another job. I had to look at like stations across the UK, and there's so many. Like there's so many sick stations.
Yeah.
And you don't always have to be based in those. So I'm going off on a tangent, but
no, it's great. Good.
You don't always have to be based in those cities to be on those stations either. You can do obviously like remote shows and stuff.
Yeah, totally. That's a really good point. Looking outside of the obvious places, and I think that's something you mentioned when we chatted before as well, was also not just always listening to the same stations.
Yeah.
That you can discover opportunities for yourself by diversifying your listening as well.
Yeah, completely. And like as I said today, like I've mentioned, like NTS is like an obvious one, like a lot, and like, you know, there's Rinse, there's Worldwide and whatever, and they keep getting mentioned. But yeah, there are like so many stations in the UK and like in Europe, and like I kind of naturally do find myself just putting on NTS like kind of by default now, but I try and there's like a cool website that I was shown like last year called Radio, and it's got like three. Does anyone know it? It's so sick, and it's got like 3 O's, and you basically go on it, and it's like a globe.
Yes, I've seen.
And then you just scroll across it, and then there's just like radio stations from like around the whole world. It's mad. So stuff like that is cool, just to like listen to. And like I have to keep reminding myself too to like diversify my radio, because it's just really, really easy not to. And maybe then I think that kind of plays into the whole feeling, maybe like you don't have the space at those stations because you've always just been listening to like the same people, so you don't realise that there's so much more.
Yeah.
And there isn't one linear way of getting into radio. Like there really, really isn't one station or one place that is just like birth loads. Like there's just so many different avenues.
Yeah, people come from all directions.
Yeah. And uni radio is also, I don't know how many people are at uni still, but like uni radio for me anyway was a really good one, not because of the direct link from the uni radio, but more because of like it got me excited about radio.
Yeah. And related to that, I think you sort of touched on it earlier as well, about like different sort of presenting styles and different types of presenter. I guess through diversifying your listening, you get a better understanding, right, of the different type of what stations are looking for, the different types of shows and presenters. Like I found it quite interesting, the last call out that NTS did, when you fill out the form, it says, is your show, like, are you a genre specialist? Is it personality based? I thought it was really interesting. I'd never really thought about it in that way, and it's made me listen to things with a whole different like perspective, actually. But do you think, like, of some of the stations we've mentioned today, do you think some of them are looking for certain types of presenter?
That's actually a good question. I think they're generally quite I think it's about what you offer and what you pitch. I feel like obviously if you are going to be, if your intention is to end up on Radio 1, then you know that you want to be, they're going to want a personality type presenter. But I also think, like, for example, for me at NTS, they got in touch for me to come on because they were at that point looking for more personality based presenters, and that had been a station for such a long time that has just been associated with like more sort of it's quite like chin strokey and whatever, and just like music, serious music. And it's like, actually I feel like all the stations need to have a balance of like personality radio and music radio, and not enforcing one on the other. But I would say like when you are pitching, that's another thing to make really clear, is like, am I like a personality, like, but you can be both. Like I think for me, I'm like both. Like the music that I play is specialist, and like I really care for the music, and like the music's obviously like the at the forefront of everything that I do, but I also think I can also be funny and be myself and be entertaining alongside that. It doesn't always have to be one or the other, so don't feel like you've got to play whatever top 40 to be able to be a radio personality either, because you don't. But again, that comes from realizing that from diversifying your listenership.
Yeah.
But like when I listen to some commercial radio, it kind of always feels like you've got to be one or the other, and there's not often that mix. So which is what I'm kind of trying to do, and what I feel like we should all be trying to do, people that are interested in maybe personality radio, is like, you tell the station this is what I am, as opposed to them needing to like tell you know what I mean.
That seems like a really great note to end on, given we're talking about authenticity.
Yeah.
Approach the station, tell them who you are and what you want to do.
Exactly.
And they'll either get on board or they won't, and hopefully they will.
That's it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's been really, really interesting. Yeah, big round of applause for Tash LC.
Thanks.
Thank you.